Welcome to the Chilling Ghost Stories channel. Today we bring you a famous Chinese ghost story titled The Moonlight Mystery. If you enjoy the story, please give us a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's get started. Chapter 17, Yearning Longingly.
Yearning considered herself lucky for still being awake, at least, that's what she told herself, but it was enough for her to boldly face the strange situation and the uncertain future ahead. Since sleep was out of the question, she decided to go for a walk outside to calm her mind. Yearning moved carefully and quietly, with some nervousness about being seen by the patients or the nurses on duty. After walking a short distance, she reached the bedside of Basan. She was sound asleep, softly snoring. Yearning glanced at the small cabinet beside the bed, noticing a few books. Curious, she approached and looked under the dim light. On top was a book titled On the Art of Stage Performance, along with others, Film Art, Role-Playing, Theories of Acting, and New Yearning 12 Flowers, Female Movie Stars of 1940s China. No wonder this old woman was so obsessed with role-playing, she had even played a role. From imitating others, she had eventually fallen into the trap of embodying the personalities of various characters. Yearning felt some sympathy for Wūng Lán Shān. Below the books was a large sketchbook. Picking it up, Yearning discovered it was a collection of sketches. Basan was quite the talented person. Yearning opened it out of curiosity, but as soon as she turned to the first page, she almost dropped the sketchbook in shock. It was a depiction of the scene Basan had just role-played, a young woman in a white dress with long hair standing by a window, and behind her, on her neck, a disfigured face. Yearning quickly placed the sketchbook back down, as if she had narrowly escaped some cursed object. She left Basan's side and walked around the ward twice, feeling her mind calm but the exhaustion creeping back in. When she returned to her bed, she found someone lying there. Yearning took a deep breath, making sure she hadn't mistaken her bed, and then carefully looked at the person lying there. It was Basan again. Yearning muttered curses under her breath, annoyed by her persistence. She pressed the bell for help. "Are you really going to kick me out?" came a voice. Yearning gasped in shock, almost falling. She quickly grabbed the chair by the bed. It was the voice of Yearning. "Basan, aren't you going to leave me alone? What do you really want?" "I am Yearning. Why should you be afraid of me?" "I only want to talk to you," came the response. "You're not Yearning, you're Wūng Lán Shān. Get out of my bed, or I'll call the nurse." Yearning snapped, the first time she had raised her voice at her. Basan sat up straight on the bed, staring at Yearning. Though the light was dim, Yearning could still make out the pained eyes of a young woman who had suffered many hardships. It was the very gaze of Yearning. And Yearning understood, Basan would not let her go. She would never escape. "Yearning is dead. You can't be." Yearning couldn't believe it, nor did she want to believe the woman sitting on the bed was Yearning. "What right do you have to say I'm not? In 1986, I entered the Second Medical University of Jiangxing, back then known as Jiangxing Medical College. I'm from Yixing, Hangzhou. In April 1987, I was admitted to this hospital, and Dr. Tian was my attending physician. My condition improved significantly. Why do you say I'm dead? Have you ever heard of Moonlight?" Yearning didn't respond directly but asked instead. Basan began to breathe heavily, resembling Yearning's reaction from before. "Of course I've heard of it, but don't ask me about it. I won't say anything. For me, it's no longer a secret. Don't you remember? You told me that Moonlight refers to the Yueguang Society. I don't understand why you didn't want to tell me at first, but in the end, you did," Yearning said. "Speaking of it, I'm afraid you'll meet your death. If I don't speak, I'm afraid that when you die, you won't be able to close your eyes," Yearning replied coldly. Was this Wūng Lán Shān or Yearning? Yearning felt that the line between them had become indistinguishable. Knowing about Wūng society, doesn't that mean you're getting closer to the truth? Yearning asked. Not necessarily, but it's certain that you'll be drawn closer to endless suffering. What's the connection between the Wūng society and the murder case 405? Who can explain it? How do you know about the Wūng society? It's just a coincidence. Back then, I was a girl full of life. My friends and I, who shared the same interests, formed a photography club. The school supported us, but there were no facilities for a darkroom. So we had to borrow a basement in the old administrative building, which was also used as a file room. At that time, I was obsessed with Moonlight and tried to find an answer, only to stumble upon the files about the Wūng Society, an organization of agents active before and after the Cultural Revolution. I read that many of its members committed suicide by jumping from buildings, so I suspected that maybe the Wūng Society had something to do with murder case 405. Did you ever see a diary? Yes, it was in the 1967 file. I thought the diary wouldn't lead to any conclusions, so I didn't pay much attention to it. I only read some of the documents in that file before being brought here. So, you've read it too? Yearning nodded and asked, why did you say that reading those files brings one closer to death? Wei-Ching shuddered. That's how I felt. After reading those files, it was like I entered a swamp and kept sinking deeper. There was always this inexplicable, intense fear surrounding me, driving me to the edge of a cliff. It may sound absurd, but it was real. Everything I thought and did was controlled by that fear. Yearning trembled. She remembered what happened at the broadcast station and the phenomena that followed when she entered the autopsy room. Wasn't that an inexplicable and intense fear? Had she unknowingly followed the same path as Shen Wei-Ching? But of the girls from room 405 who jumped from the building, you were the only one who survived. Do you remember what happened, what urged you to jump, and how you were saved? Yearning asked. I don't remember, and I don't want to know. I accept what you said earlier, actually, I've already died. Yearning immediately recalled the image of Wei-Ching jumping from the building and fell into sorrow, tears streaming down her face. Unable to sit any longer, she stood up. You think that way? I need to go outside. Don't go. Tell me, how do you know that I've already died? Were you there when it happened? Wei-Ching got off the bed and moved toward him. I don't know. Yearning fought back tears, taking a step back. It seems your tears are mixed with guilt. What's going on? How did I die? Wei-Ching's voice grew more intense, her gaze sharp, piercing Yearning's heart with pain. Please don't push me. Yearning felt her own weakness exposed. Deep inside, she had a gnawing guilt. If it hadn't been for her visit, Wei-Ching wouldn't have had to die. This thought, still gnawing at her, was now laid bare, cold and cruel, driving Yearning to despair. Is it your fault? Did you? Wei-Ching's voice cracked, as she reached out with both hands, pleading and determined to not let Yearning escape. Finally, Yearning sobbed uncontrollably. The dim light in the nurse's station suddenly lit up. It was time for the shift change and rounds. Dingliang Zhuan, hearing the report from the intern who worked the night shift, learned that the female patient, Yearning, had again not slept well the previous night. He furrowed his brow. Upon asking about the cause, it turned out that the old patient, Wūng Lán Shān, had had an episode and taken on 3 personalities from past patients to disturb Yearning. Wūng Lán Shān. Dingliang Zhuan could only shake his head. In his professional capacity, he never backed down, but with this patient, he felt helpless. Wūng Lán Shān had a rare case of dissociative identity disorder. Typically, patients exhibit their own core personality along with an additional personality, one they imagine. A split into 3 or more personalities is extremely rare, although there had been reports of patients with more than 10 personalities, most of which were misdiagnoses, largely due to errors in analysis by neurologists. However, Wūng Lán Shān had undergone multiple accurate diagnoses, and it was confirmed that she could play 68 different personalities, a number that continued to rise each year. This made her a famous and strange case in the medical field. Experts in neuropathology from all over the world had come to study her, including top specialists from Europe and the US, but none had managed to understand the true nature of her condition. The strange thing was that, aside from her original personality, the other identities she portrayed were not imagined, they were all based on people she had met. Naturally, since she had spent most of her life in a psychiatric hospital, it appeared that the personalities she manifested were mimics of patients who had been hospitalized there. The report from the night shift indicated that, the previous night, Wūng Lán Shān had gone into an episode and played the roles of Zhuang Yifan, Xian Yuhong, and Shen Weiqing. Du Jing and Wei Qing had both been medical students at Jiangjing who had once been patients at this hospital. As for Zhuang Yifan, who was she? Spring was a time when psychiatric illnesses tended to worsen, and specific stressors could exacerbate symptoms and increase the frequency of episodes. Ding Liangjuan was almost certain that Yashin's admission to the hospital had caused Wūng Lán Shān to become agitated. He wrote a note in Wūng Lán Shān's medical record and reminded the nurses, "Make sure to call my office and follow my instructions regarding her treatment. We must focus on a psychological analysis for her, and we need to act quickly." Looking through the window of the nurse's station, Ding Liangjuan saw Wūng Lán Shān with her hunched back, walking slowly. He couldn't understand, why does she cling to Yashin like that? Why did Wūng Lán Shān keep watching me last night? Yashin thought of this question as soon as she woke up. She had been disturbed until late at night, and the nurses had to give her a sedative before she could sleep. Now, when she woke up, the day was already bright, and the routine rounds had already ended. Yashin felt so alone that she just wanted to cry. Just yesterday, she had thought she was tough, with a clear mind, able to adapt to the environment and get through this phase. She thought she should listen to the doctors and try to leave as soon as possible. But after 2 sleepless nights like this, she didn't know how much longer she could endure. The scariest thing was the feeling of loneliness. She had already seen the consequences of interacting with Wūng Lán Shān and the scarred woman. Yashin decided she would not engage with any other patients anymore. This went against her nature, but she had no other choice. Why were they doing this? Making her feel like her soul had been taken away, not letting her sleep peacefully, this was clearly not right. Could it be, as Shen Weiqing said last night, that this was a quicksand that was sinking deeper by the day? But either way, they had already reaped their harvest. She was truly alone now. Yashin got out of bed and saw Ding Liangjuan sitting at the nurse's station writing up the report. She walked over and stood outside the door, asking, "Dr. Deng, may I bother you for a moment?" He turned around and saw Yashin. He quickly stood up and asked, "Did you sleep well last night, Miss Ye?" "I wanted to ask, how much longer do I have to stay here?" Yashin asked. Seeing the sorrow in her eyes, Ding Liangjuan felt pity for her. But as a psychiatrist, he knew that reason had to come before sympathy. He replied gently, "It's hard to say for sure, it could be 1 or 2 months, depending on how you improve. But, they won't leave me alone." Ding Liangjuan was taken aback, but then he remembered the events of the last 2 days with Yashin. He said, "Don't worry, we'll move the patient who's been troubling you to another room. Wūng Lán Shān hasn't shown any violent behavior toward you, so I will take action. We'll adjust her medication and conduct a psychological analysis. We'll control her condition, but I'm still scared. I feel like they have some ulterior motive." Ding Liangjuan closely observed Yashin. Her hair was messy, and her complexion was pale. A young woman in the spring of her life who hadn't even bothered to brush her hair or look in a mirror. Clearly, she had been haunted by the thought that she was the victim. Back at school, She worried she would become the victim of the 405 assassination case, and now, she felt like a patient she didn't know was plotting against her. The sensation of being persecuted was a typical symptom of schizophrenia. The treatment for this young woman still had a long way to go. Please don't worry. Take it easy, go for a walk, do some exercise, and try not to think about this. I'll make arrangements to talk to you and see how I can help you better. I hope you'll let me leave the hospital soon. Yashin's eyes were full of pleading, but her tone was firm. I will try my best, but I still have a responsibility toward you. If you had a responsibility to me, you'd let me leave. Yashin said, unable to contain herself. Afterward, she regretted it a little. Do you think you'd be safer if you left? Dingliang Chuan was now more convinced that Yashin needed to stay in the hospital. He felt he had spoken out of turn. Yashin was affected by his words, that's right. Where could I feel safe? Even if I have to keep worrying and being scared, I'd rather live in the outside world. Yashin knew she wouldn't be able to change Dingliang Chuan's arrangements, so she coldly said this and turned away. Outside, the sunlight was bright. Perhaps the sunlight could illuminate her heart. Yashin stepped into the sunlight. The weather had been unpredictable these past few days, with both rain and sunshine, but now the sun was shining brightly, and the air was fresh and smooth. As Yashin walked into the garden, she felt a little more at ease. But as groups of patients passed by, she felt like a lonely wildflower in the forest. At that moment, she would give anything to have a close friend to talk to. She even felt frustrated, wanting to shout to the sky, to the ones I love, to the ones who love me, everyone. Where is she now? But her mother had already left in a rush. Yashin had a feeling of grievance. Is a career really that important? Yashin was resting at home, but what about Xie Xuan? The young man, Xie Xuan, once said he loved her. Where is he now? Perhaps he heard that she had to be hospitalized for a mental condition and, taking advantage of the opportunity, he abandoned her. This thought suddenly occurred to Yashin, making her nose tingle. Yashin, it turns out you are so weak. Yashin seemed to have lost the courage to continue, so she stopped by a large ash tree, closed her eyes to prevent the tears that were about to fall. Maybe I really do have a mental illness. Her heart felt heavy. At this moment, she didn't even recognize herself anymore, with all the sensitivity, the suspicion, and these trivial things suffocating her. How could she still think of a man who had almost disappeared without a trace? Right. It's time for me to really forget him. Unless he suddenly appears, as if by miracle, bringing to me a bright ray of light full of warmth. When people's hearts are almost cold and on the verge of surrendering to despair, that's when they hope for miracles to happen to them. Yashin knew she was truly pitiful, but she was powerless, even unable to stop her tears from falling. At the moment her tears soaked her eyelashes, a hand reached out to wipe her tears away. Just like Xie Xuan once did. It was really Xie Xuan. Yashin's first thought was to go see Dingliang Chuan, the doctor, who had said she was hallucinating and needed systematic psychiatric treatment. But after looking closely, and even touching his hand, she concluded that this was a miracle. Indeed, the miracle had appeared. Yashin felt a bit confused about how to react to all these unexpected feelings. She couldn't say a word, suddenly stood up and walked away, like a startled fawn. Perhaps it was because this reunion had been rehearsed in her mind so many times, that when it actually happened, she felt awkward and nervous in front of so many spectators. Should she keep a cold expression? Or should she cry and complain? Or should she let him embrace her, and tell him all her longing? Perhaps she should just ask one question: why didn't you let me forget you? Yashin, I have come to you. It seems you also hoped for my arrival, Yashin wanted to say, but she stopped herself. These past few days, I couldn't find a chance to break free, even finding you was difficult. But I have thought of you every second, sometimes thinking so hard my head ached. That's right, The school was very suspicious of her actions, especially about the trip to Yixing, and of course, they wouldn't let him go. You know, when I miss you, I also get a headache from thinking so much. Now I am free. I have thought it over. You can think of me however you like, but I will visit you every day, sit with you here in this garden. I want to be with you forever. Yexin knew that when Xie Xuan said these words, he wasn't shy about expressing his true feelings. Finally, Yexin stopped her hurried steps and turned back to look at Xie Xuan from head to toe. He was wearing a long white robe, clearly disguised as a doctor. His gaze was still as determined and clear as before. Yexin felt that she didn't wish for anything else anymore. But the irritating tears started to fall again, and Yexin secretly made a resolution. This time, she would cry for the last time. It's nice, though, I get to have the person I love wipe my tears. Xie Xuan placed both his hands on Yexin's cheeks. You've lost weight. Did it really turn out exactly as I've rehearsed? The resolution Yexin had made only a few seconds ago was already fading away. Yexin took Xie Sun's hand and pressed it against her lips, as if about to kiss it, but instead, she gently bit him. Xie Xuan yelped, looked at the light bite mark on his hand, then looked at Yexin. You don't speak unless you bite me. Soon, Yexin said, I'm a crazy girl, you should stay away from me. Xie Xuan wrapped his arms around Yexin. Don't talk nonsense, you're more awake than anyone else. And most importantly, you're stronger than anyone. I feel ashamed that I'm not even close, that's why I admire and love you more. Yexin noticed a few patients around them were curiously watching her and Xie Xuan, but never mind. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, don't give me a paper plane anymore. I was about to tell you, but listen first, don't get too proud. If you don't abandon me like this, it will only make me stronger. Stronger, in what way? By biting me? I think you just have strong teeth. Be serious. I have a lot to tell you. But in the end, Yexin didn't want to stay longer in front of everyone, so she fixed her hair and walked away slowly with Xie Xuan in the garden. Has the school been questioning you these days? Talking to Xie Xuan always made Yexin feel light and comfortable. Of course. They kept asking when I went with you. Just like Yexin, Xie Xuan liked to use the lyrics from Sui Jian's, nothing more. And, where did we go, what did we see, etc. Honestly, recently, Yexin, Xie Xuan has become the celebrity couple of the school. They call us superstars, making countless people dream about us. So, you still dare to come here? Because I want to see you. There's something very strange I still want to ask you. The day the school wanted to capture me and send me to the hospital, I ran away through the nursery path you and I took. When I reached the gate, there was a taxi waiting, and the driver said it was there to take me. Did you arrange that? No. At that time, I didn't know anything about your situation, so how could I arrange it? That's really strange. But even the staff said a woman had called for the car. Who could that be? Strange things have happened to you before, haven't they? I think this is just another one of them. Xie Xuan shrugged. But you also encouraged me to find out the truth about the ghost. Now you're being wise and trying to play it safe. But it depends on the situation. Right now, you're exhausted. It's not the time to stress yourself out like Sherlock Holmes. You need to rest and recover first. But June 16th is coming soon. At one point, I thought if you were still locked up in this tightly guarded hospital, maybe you'd be safe from the disaster. At first, Yexin felt that Xie Sun's words made sense, but after thinking for a moment, she shook her head. Even if I escape, the disaster will fall on someone else. Years ago, on June 16th, Xiang Yuhong was in the hospital, and indeed, he was safe. But his roommate, Du Jing, died. And the year after that, Xiang Yuhong also jumped off a building. These past few days, I've been thinking a lot, and I feel that every year, someone is chosen to be tormented in all ways, and in the end, they still die. It seems the chosen one this year is me. Xie Xuan suddenly stopped, grabbed Ye Xin's shoulders, and shouted, "Don't talk nonsense. Where did you hear such a ridiculous theory? You're trapping yourself, do you know that? You're pretending to be the victim and trying to play the role of the one who suffers. This is even scarier than being misunderstood." Xie Sun's words were like a refreshing rain that woke Ye Xin up. That's right, Du Shuliang had said the same thing. She was clearly playing the victim, and now, the person urging her to do so was Wūng Lán Shān. She was approaching her with the characteristics of Yu Hong and Wei Qing, subtly telling her she couldn't fight against fate. At this moment, Ye Xin felt even more grateful to Xie Xuan. People often say, good fortune doesn't come twice, but today, Ye Xin wasn't only glowing in spring because Xie Xuan came to visit. After Xie Xuan left, not long after, You Shulian also entered. Seeing Ye Xin's pale face but bright eyes, Liang silently wondered. He asked, "Ye Xin, are you adjusting well? Do you really have to ask? You should try staying here yourself." Now, Ye Xin realized that so many people cared about her, and the feeling of loneliness she had before was really unnecessary. "Ye Xin, you really are strong. I was worried for nothing. Thank you for telling me that I would be sent to the hospital, but unfortunately, I couldn't escape. Especially today, you came to visit me again. I have an idea, when you return, you could tell the radio station to interview you. Just say you have valuable information about Ye Xin, she's happily staying in the psychiatric hospital, and make sure to praise how strong and resilient I am." This girl could even joke. Liang couldn't help but admire this younger student. "Ye Xin, I'm sure you've heard these rumors, but don't worry about them. But I do enjoy rumors like the superstar couple. Liang was guessing that Ye Xin would say something sarcastic, but she smiled innocently and sweetly. "You really have sharp ears. But I don't believe those rumors at all. You and Xie Xuan have nothing between you. Even if there was something, so what? He just visited me." Ye Xin smiled brightly and innocently, already lost in the intoxication of her feelings. Half an hour after Xie Xuan left, she already missed him. "What? He just visited you?" Liang was surprised, his mouth about to say something, but he stopped. Ye Xin noticed something strange in Liang's behavior. "What's wrong? Why can't he visit me?" "Of course he can. So, does that mean, you two really, is it so strange? If not, then what would people gossip about? He and I went to Yixing together, he just said the school has known about it for a long time, and even the Yixing police came to ask him." "Right. You're right. It's just that I didn't expect it. Well, I have to go now. Next time I'll come again. Do you need anything?" "I bet I guessed right, you've fallen for someone else, so you've become so considerate." "Thanks, but no need. My mom just left a few days ago and prepared everything for me. I won't run out of supplies for years." Liang suddenly froze, his usual smile froze, and his eyes stared blankly at something behind Ye Xin. Ye Xin turned around and was surprised to see, outside the guest room window, someone standing and staring at them without blinking. It was Wūng Lán Shān.